Hello, everybody. Hello, people in the room at Poets House, New York City, and hello, ModPo people online. As you can obviously tell, I'm not Al. We really thank you for being patient. Al and Anna are both stuck on a train on their way here, and they will be joining us, our broadcast already in progress. So we're going to get started without them, and then they'll just come up and join in. Before I start with the introductions to the podcast, I want to introduce Stephen Motika, who's the artistic director here at Poets House. He's just going to talk very briefly and introduce us to the space.
Thank you so much, Lily. Welcome to Poets House, and we're delighted that ModPo is here in residence for the next 75 minutes or so. And for those of you who don't know us, I want to encourage you to come visit us. We're a poetry library and archive in New York City, right on the banks of the Hudson. We have 60,000 volumes of poetry and exhibition space. We do events throughout the year, readings, events for children, classes, seminars. We have a really interesting and innovative Emerging Poets Fellowship program. And I hope if you're out there in the ether, you look at poetshouse.org and look at what we do. We also have some national programs. So if you're somewhere elsewhere than New York or even Philly, you could find things local to you. We also collect comprehensively. So if you're a poet, a publisher, and you produce a book, a chapbook, a journal, anything, please send it to us. We really have one of the great poetry collections in English on the globe. We're open free, too, so if you are in New York City, even passing by for an afternoon, please come and visit our collections, be inspired by our books, and we have a great river view, too. So, and then for all of you in the room here, I will just invite you after our podcast to come up and join us for some refreshments, take a look at our Trevor Winkfield exhibition, which opened last night, and just poke around the space. And if you're not on our mailing list, of course, sign up, and most importantly, come back. This place is for all of you. And I want to thank Lily and, of course, Al for broaching the idea of coming up, and I'll turn it back over.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Okay, so it's a lonely table up here, but obviously next to me we have TA Allie Castleman, New York City resident. Oh, Allie's getting applause in the room. How exciting. Okay, and then we have some TAs to introduce on the Hangouts. So first we have Amaris Kuchansky, who I'm really excited to see. Hi, Amaris.
Hi, Lily. How are you guys?
Oh,
can you hear me?
To maybe unmute herself?
I did. I did unmute myself. Can you not hear me?
I can hear you, Amaris.
Okay, good. At least one person can hear me.
So we have Amaris. Hi, Amaris. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we have Caroline, who I think we're seeing in the webcast for the first time.
Yes.
Is that right?
Hello.
Would you introduce yourself quickly? Because I think the ModPo people might not have seen your face yet.
Sure. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Pennsylvania. I work on modernist poetics, pedagogy, and history of the book. I'm a teaching fellow for ModPo this year, so I'm working on the For Teachers section. So for the teachers who are taking ModPo, if you have any questions about using ModPo in your classroom, I'm here to help you.
Great, thank you, Caroline. And then, of course, we have Max coming from Chicago. Hi, Max.
Hi, Lily.
In his red room.
Those of you watching at home, I'm sorry it's so red and dark. There's an issue with my camera. I don't know what it is, but I'll work on it.
It's not just a mood that follows you around everywhere.
It's not just for Halloween, no.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so whether this is your first time tuning into a webcast or not, there's a bunch of different ways that you can get your questions to us. We have a subforum created in the live webcast discussions, and then within that, I created a thread that said, please post your questions here, but some people are either disregarding that or choosing to use it, so post them there, and Allie and I will look for them. You can also pose a question on Twitter using the hashtag ModPo Live, all one word, ModPo Live. You can also use that to live tweet. There's a lot of very active, fun tweeters in there. And lastly, you can call us. Even on the road, we brought our phone with us. And the phone number is different than our usual number. It's 484-483-5708. So again, that's 484-483-5708. 5708. Okay, so I'll read that again a couple other times. And because it's a lonely table up here, before the recording got started, I asked the audience who was brave enough to be the first volunteer, and Irina said that she would be. So I'm going to invite her to come up to this microphone right next to me. Yay! Brave young lady. So Irina, maybe you can introduce yourself and maybe say something about the class that you're with that's here.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Irina Grishevaya. I am a senior student at Burke College here in New York City, and I am taking an honors class with my amazing classmates that are here today about concept writing and concept art. So it's a dual class that's mixed together, so we're exploring various ways of how to convey our art and writing in new, spontaneous, surprising ways.
So cool. And are you guys caught up on the Imagism and Williams? Is that, or are you just just in the, great, okay, well then that's good. Awesome. I love that you were so brave that you volunteered to come up and you're not even sure what we're discussing. I love that. Okay. So I think that just to gauge, are there any questions in the room, people who maybe are caught up with ModPo and came here like with a burning question, I need to ask the TAs this question live? Mandana has a portable mic and she can come to you, and she's willing to use it. Okay, well, if there's no burning question, I think that we'll just dive right in. So I thought one thing that we could do with our time here together would be to try a live close reading of one of this week's poems. And you know, I know that there's videos of us close reading them online, but you know, it's really fun to do that live in a room. And if there's a particular poem that's giving anyone trouble this week in the room, or if no one in the room has one, maybe one of the TAs has a poem that they always get stuck on this week. But I'd like to know first, is there a Imagist poem or a Williams poem that either this is your first time through the course and you really got tripped up, or you know, you come back time and time again and it keeps giving you trouble?
Or just a poem that you particularly liked this week. You guys can just, if anyone has one, you can just shout it out, kind of improv style, and then we'll just go with the first thing we get. Or I would be happy to recommend. This is actually one of my favorite weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll ask you to recommend one.
I think we should give some attention to
maybe a short one in case people don't have the text.
Okay, that's a very good point. Let's see. Let's start with a Portrait of a Lady.
Ooh, okay. Now, would you like to perform a reading of this poem?
Sure.
Oh, I wasn't expecting a yes. Okay.
Unless anyone else would like to perform a reading of the poem.
Okay.
No volunteers. All right. William Carlos Williams, Portrait of a Lady. Your thighs are apple trees, whose blossoms touch the sky. Which sky? The sky where Watteau hung a lady's slipper. Your knees are a southern breeze, or a gust of snow. Ah, what sort of man was Fragonard? As if that answered anything. Ah, yes, below the knees, since the tune drops that way. It is one of those white summer days, the tall grass of your ankles flickers upon the shore. Which shore? The sand clings to my lips. Which shore? Ah, petals, maybe. How should I know? Which shore? Which shore? The petals from some hidden apple tree. Which shore? I said petals from an apple tree.
Oh, a nice round of applause for Allie. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Irina, who perhaps has never heard that poem before.
I have not.
Okay.
It's quite beautiful.
So why don't you kick us off and just say anything you heard or anything that came to mind in your first hearing of the poem. And my phone is shorting out a little bit, but I'm trying to pull up the text here. So
Here,
you could take
I think
I'll give
the
you
first
Oh, thank you.
thing I had in my head wasn't even a visualization. It was a scent of just being in a spring meadow amongst an apple orchard. And yeah, seeing
Nice.
a beautiful woman that's just like smells of these apples, and she's so luscious and sweet and unattainable.
Okay, so a very romantic image, maybe like a classic image. What do you make of this interrupting voice that says things like, which sky, what sort of man was Fragonard, as if that answered anything, which shore, how should I know? Is that something you usually expect to see in a poem about apple trees and orchards? Women?
I don't think so, but we all have our doubts. And there's always
nice.
a second voice coming in when you don't know if you're actually falling in love or you're just lusting for someone.
That's nice. Okay. I like that. Does anyone in the audience maybe have a thought about this juxtaposition maybe between an idyllic image and the interrupting voice asking annoying questions? Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Ah, wonderful.
So I also haven't, it's my first time hearing the poem, so
Awesome.
I'm not quite sure if I get this right. But I kind of heard it as, you know, as you mentioned, it's this idyllic image, like, oh, so romantic. But then there's like this realistic voice, like, no, what's going on? Which shore? Like, are you over romantic? Kind of questioning the perhaps potential over romanticizing of the thighs that look like apple trees. Or
Yeah, that's great. I like that. And now, yes, over romanticizing, overstating. But I'm interested in the idea of overstating because something like, well, I guess thighs like apple trees is actually not a very nice thing to say when you think about it. I don't know. Apple trees are kind of stout and weird looking, so maybe it's not
Craggly and branched.
Yeah, so maybe it's not quite a traditional concept of beauty from the original speaker to begin with. But what do you think? What is the interrupting voice here afraid of, or what is interrupting voice anxious about in saying which sky, which shore, how should I know?
Hi, thank you. To me, the which shore and which sky, it's saying what, struggling to contextualize our experience. Like if you even think about shore, you mean the shore to where you're going or the shore that you came from? You know, a shore, what is a shore? It's the difference between ground, earth, something you can walk on, and something you can only swim in. So to me, it's asking questions that really penetrate into a deep place in your soul that you can't really put into words. Like, what even is it?
Oh, okay,
shore.
so great. So I heard two things. I heard asking for specifics, like, you know, I'm looking at a map. I need to know which shore you're talking about. And I heard, you know, sort of which shore, what does that word even mean, or where does that word even sort of take us poetically? Very cool. So when we think about specifics, the word specifics in the which shore, which sky, that should sort of, I feel like that really kicks us off in our week of Imagism. You know, this is an interesting choice for a first poem to sort of warm us up here because maybe it doesn't. Well, can anyone say actually what the difference might be between this and the classic William Carlos Williams So Much Depends Upon Red Wheelbarrow? Oh, Sharon. And this is Sharon Ingram, famous in the ModPo forums, who are finally meeting face to face. It's so exciting.
So famous, yes.
Oh, Madonna says infamous.
That's probably closer to the truth. Yeah, when I was listening to this, I was thinking, was he through with his images phase by here? Because isn't Imagism all about the exact word?
Yeah, not the nearly exact word, right?
Precise everything, and this wasn't like that at all.
So what about your thighs are apple trees whose blossoms touch the sky?
It's a
is
metaphor.
Not the exact word.
Yeah.
We hope it's a metaphor. Right?
Yes, we hope it's a metaphor. Yeah.
Right. And so what did the imagists have to say about metaphors? You
that you don't use them. Pretty much.
Yeah, right. Right.
You know, you need to say exactly what they are. Your eyes are, your thighs are white, fat, whatever. And they were very particular.
Yes.
I also think, getting back to what Irina said at the beginning, it's interesting that just hearing this poem, the sense you got was a sense as opposed to any precise image in your mind, which I think had it been your thighs are white and jiggly or whatever, like that wouldn't have given you a sense. That would have given you an image, and I'm sure it would have been. I mean, of course, you could use more romantic adjectives, but there's something. I mean, when what was the poem that was it Wheelbarrow?
Mm-hmm.
Do you, like in the room, like when you read or listen to Wheelbarrow, what is your kind of first response? Is it kind of more of an emotional feeling or a sense, or do you see the painting? Like, do you see it in front of you? Let's have like hands for the first, hands for the second. All right, that's pretty unanimous. Yeah, so that's a very interesting. I think that says a lot about what Williams is doing and the direction he's kind of going in.
Yeah.
By the same token, the plums, you get both, I think. You feel, I feel he's very cavalier about eating the plums. And so you feel that, but I see it too. So he's very precise there, but you still get the sense they took the plums very cavalierly, ate them, too bad.
Let's maybe let's think about Imagism just for one more minute before we go forward. I'm stealing Allie's paper, but I'm going to read that poem I referred to, The Red Wheelbarrow by Williams, and then I'm hoping maybe we can talk about it in context with Portrait of a Lady, which we just heard. So, The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So, any first thoughts in comparing that poem to the Portrait of a Lady that we just heard? Maybe Irina, it's my go-to first reaction since you haven't read these poems.
Well, first time I seen this poem was a few years ago back in one of my introductory English classes, and the first time I heard it, I felt like I was in Pennsylvania on a farm holding that wheelbarrow in high knee up in mud and gunk and all of this rain falling, and it's just like the colors that he uses, the white and the red, the camaraderie of a farm, the whole socialistic kind of attempt to do something together within that poem.
So for you, the image really worked.
Yeah.
How about for everyone else?
So I've actually read these poems before, but it was like in middle school, so it's a very long time ago. And I felt like for the Red Wheelbarrow, it definitely paints a much more vivid picture. But with A Painted Lady, I felt like, unlike Irina, I actually pictured the thighs first and then saw them transform into trees in my mind. So it wasn't a
and then the
sense,
whole thing got interrupted by which thighs, or whatever the question is. Not which thighs,
but I felt like
whatever.
But I felt like in A Painted Lady or Portrait of a Lady, you can actually get a better sense of the emotion behind the writer or the narrator of the poem.
Yeah.
Like you can better understand the confusion and the kind of anxiety they feel because of their relationship with this woman.
Yes.
Whereas in A Red Wheelbarrow, you kind of have to grab at the images and try to make a connection between the images and what the author is trying to get at. It's much harder.
Yes. Okay. Very nicely said. So I think what you're saying is that the speaker in Portrait of a Lady is like of two minds about the subject, or has some kind of anxiety about it, which I don't know. I don't know that we necessarily get that in the Red Wheelbarrow. Hard to say that a couple times, because you can see it on the page. It's so sparse and definitive, and sort of a clear image. It sounded like we got a phone call.
We did.
Aha! How exciting! We're on the road and we have a phone.
Technology.
We have a phone call from Colleen Knight.
Oh, it's Colleen Knight, also famous on ModPo forums.
So I'm going to try
Great. And maybe we'll turn to the TAs, Maurice and Caroline and Max, for help answering Colleen's question. So you guys don't have to listen to me talk for the next however long. Hi, Colleen. Are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good. You found us while we were on the road.
I did.
And we're coming in.
My question tonight.
Oh, yeah. Go right ahead.
My question tonight is, because we're focusing a lot on Imagism, I'm trying to figure out, when does a person go from being an object to what we tend to dislike, which would be someone who is objectified. And how does that seem to be working in, for example, Pound's poem, The Encounter?
I was hoping that was the example you were going to bring up. Awesome. Okay. Great question. Can I turn to either...
First, should we take a second to just briefly read The Encounter?
Oh, yeah. Actually, we'll read it out into the room. Oh, wait. This is... Oh, yeah. Here.
Yeah.
So this is Ezra Pound's The Encounter. All the while they were talking the new morality, her eyes explored me. And when I rose to go, her fingers were like the tissue of a Japanese paper napkin. Okay, so Colleen's question is, if I may restate it, when does a person who becomes a subject of an Imagist poem become an object, and sort of how do we feel about that maybe necessary process to fit people into the Imagist world? So can I turn to Maurice?
I think we could say that happens when a person is reduced to one specific image that is an act of objectification. If we look back at the Portrait of a Lady, which we were discussing earlier, it is a very idealistic, classical portrayal of female beauty that in no way really tries to characterize the essence of what a person truly is. And I kind of read that Interrupting Voice as a breakdown in Williams's ability to have that fully unified, sort of perfect representation of a woman. I think his sort of self-awareness, self-consciousness, someone said that realistic voice catches up to him. And by the final line, we have a conflation of two images that don't really make sense together. He says, I said petals from an apple tree. So he goes from his very sort of confident first line of, that metaphorical image we've all heard, and it kind of sort of just breaks down until the end when he kind of just relinquishes that project of objectification, total representation. So that would be my response to that.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree that we're witnessing Williams have some kind of breakdown in Portrait of a Lady, and I really think that you're right. It's a breakdown of just you starting a project and maybe realizing it's impossible to do it right, or it's too big and too difficult, or he doesn't want to do it that way anymore, or, especially with the references to Fragonard and Watteau, like he wants to update it, be more modern, but he can't. So yeah, I really like that. Caroline or Max?
Colleen asked me this question in my office hours, very similar. I guess earlier today. Colleen, are you still there? Can you hear me? Can she hear me?
I am. Hi,
Okay,
Max.
great. Hi, Colleen. How are you?
Great.
Great. Did you see my response to your question in office hours?
Yes, I did. Thank you kindly. What I was asking you was, I was starting to get mixed up between the words object, objectified, and objectification. And you kind of clarified those for me, and then also gave me additional information which helped as well.
Sure, great.
So I still didn't really understand the shift from when a person was an object sitting on a chair to someone who then became objectified.
Aha,
I didn't know where that shift would happen in a poem. And I guess the one that I was mainly looking at was The Encounter, although I did like the explanation we just got from Maurice about Portrait of a Lady. That gave me some more ideas on that.
Well, maybe we can look at the ending line of the poem, Max. Her fingers were like the tissue of a Japanese paper napkin.
Sure. To go with just to start with Colleen's the first part of Colleen's question there about when does a person go from being an object to being objectified. That's a tough question. I think the distinction that we work with here in ModPo, and especially when we're talking about the Imagists and this poem in particular, is that we assume already that people are subjects and not objects. And so they become objectified by being made into objects. So the woman in this poem is, she's sitting in the chair, she's a subject, she has a subjectivity, she has a consciousness, she has an inner life, and so forth. Pound reduces her to an object by comparing her to a Japanese paper napkin, almost a sort of like Orientalist fetishistic object, right? And in so doing discards her subjectivity. And that is the process of objectification, and that is when she becomes objectified. So I think person being an object and being objectified for our purposes is the same thing in the way that we've been using it, at least in talking about Imagism, and I think it's an important thing to talk about too in Imagism as we do, because it seems like the limits of Imagism are right there at that horizon, right between when somebody goes from being a subject to an object, and Imagism seems to want to abandon its project right as it struggles to deal with how to represent people as anything other than objects.
Colleen, how do you feel about Max's answer there? I think
I love that answer.
Okay.
I now have clarity.
Oh, good. Oh, so that maybe
and I
you can share
haven't
some
had
with
that
me.
for 2 days.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, I think you're really right to point to that poem as showing us a moment where, Imagism tries to make us subjective, having its own thoughts and feelings, human being, an object, and if you're trying to think about the project of Imagism as like rendering something with the exact right words, it's hard to say when you're not just literally looking at a red wheelbarrow or some sea poppies. It's hard to say what you're even trying to render. Is he trying to render the moment when she got up to go? Or, and can you really talk about a moment and not a person? So it's all complicated there. And I think a great question. And can I ask, Colleen, how you feel about our Imagism week generally?
I find it a tough go, but it's because I feel like when we started with HD, that the images were handed to us on a platter, and the images were what they were, and we were to accept them as they were. But as I move along through the poems, through Pound, etc., I'm enjoying it a lot more.
Oh,
so I'm
good.
moving from disliking Imagism to having a new appreciation for it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
I think another really interesting thing that we'd be doing a disservice to the encounter if we didn't mention is that the woman in this poem doesn't start out as an object. The second line, her eyes explored me. And so I think part of what's so dynamic about this particular poem, which isn't imagistic, is that it almost seems as though Pound, when he recognizes himself maybe being objectified by this woman, his own ego and his own subjectivity, we can kind of read in the poem, is perhaps what propels him to reduce her to that state.
Oh, I like that reading. It makes me picture like a bad horror movie where the eyeballs in a painting are like moving though, because like she is just statically looking, but yeah, it's interesting, almost like a vindictive flattening.
Yeah, like, no, this is my job.
Oh, wow, I like that.
But I also think that what's important there, and what we start to see, especially with Portrait of Lady, is that what maybe the thing that sparks that transition is ego, and is Pound's ego asserting itself in the poem. And so when that happens, the direction of the poem kind of has to change. And things aren't as simple, but also perhaps, I mean, I don't want to say boring, because I don't think that HD is boring at all, but there's more movement in just the kind of interplay of objectivity and subjectivity and ego.
Yeah. I think that's right.
What's HD?
We had a question in the room, what's HD? HD stands for Hilda Doolittle, but it's the name of a poet who goes by HD. And some of her poems we're looking at this week are Sea Poppies and Sea Rose. Yes, okay, thank you. Ooh, my brain. Okay, so Colleen, do you have anything else for us?
That's about it for now. Thank you kindly.
Well, thank you so much for calling. Oh my goodness, we just had someone walk into the room.
Making quite the entrance.
Guys, Amtrak is the worst.
Okay, yay, Anna's here. So, for those of you who don't know, this is Anna Strong. She's one of our amazing class TAs and course coordinator this year, doing an awesome job. Was just stuck on an Amtrak train for a long time. And
quite as long as Al. Although I would like to point out that I left after Al and still beat him here.
We can blame him.
So there's that.
Okay, well, and this is Irina. She joined us from the audience.
Well, hi.
Okay, so I'll give Anna like a second to
breathe.
Decompress. That water's free, by the way, if you want it. And
do we want to give one more person an opportunity to come up before Al steals the
Oh
seat
yeah,
away?
does anyone want to swap? And I've heard that David, Derek, or Danielle, 3Ds, one of them might be interested in joining. All right, well, let's thank Irina for being a brave first volunteer. All right, come on up. And this is David. Awesome.
Hi, David.
Okay, so maybe David can help us address. I saw Eric had a hand back there. We'll just give him the microphone a second.
So I wanted to say something about the relationship of the poem Portrait of a Lady to the wheelbarrow.
Mhm.
Okay, so hold that for a second.
Okay.
There we go, that's Williams. My other hand, I've got HD here, okay? The relationship of Sea Rose to Sheltered Garden. So
Can I in addressing the first point, can I
Yes.
throw in, and maybe you can help wrangle all this together.
Sure.
We had a post on the forums from Edith Johnson, and I'll read you what she wrote, and maybe that will, because it relates to what you're saying. She says, in both Wheelbarrow and Portrait, Imagism is interrupted. In Wheelbarrow, by the first 4 words, so much depends upon, William gives us a whole context for understanding the image rather than just the image. I find Portrait of a Lady hilarious, a poet grasping for his object of desire, who keeps interrupting the poem, throwing off rhythm, and maybe the lover, etc. I see Imagism being undercut. Is Imagism being undercut with how Williams is doing it? So throw that into your comparison, however you may.
So when we look at Imagism proper, okay, so we're looking, let's say, at HD's poems, Sea Poppies, Sea Rose, or we're looking at Williams' poem, The Red Wheelbarrow, okay, that there we have, what we tend to think about, coming pretty close to Ezra Pound's manifesto for Imagism.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this really radiant, clear, gem-like image. Now, I know we can argue
Sure.
about that, but that's the idea. Okay, and these are poems that we've looked at for the last 100 years as exemplifying Imagism in that way. These other 2 poems, Portrait of a Lady, on one hand, we're talking about an artistic process, and it's quite a comic poem, but it kind of thematizes the writer's dilemma. How do I get to the point where I can achieve this kind of modernist poem? In HD's Sheltered Garden, we have something similar going on. Okay, the sheltered garden is very different space than the sea garden in which the rose poem and the poppies poem comes from. The sheltered garden is all about the over-cultivation, and it's a poem very rich in metaphor. It's a poem which is explicitly feminist, I think. It looks at the way middle-class women were treated and what their limitations were. You know, that idea of the formal garden you couldn't escape from. Okay, and you know, HD's idea of escape is, look, forget this. There's no dignity here. Let me go to the place where the land and the sea meet, and we're going to see this incredibly rugged, dignified little rose that has its own unique scent, beauty, whatever. And so there's a great relation between those two poems. So you get, you know, here's the poem working through, you know, almost an Ars Poetica. How do I get there? And then for Williams, looking at Portrait of a Lady, I think that poem bears a kind of relationship, you know, thematizing the poet's struggle to get there, and then something that he's actually achieved. So it might be helpful to readers to maybe think about those poems together like that.
Cool. Yeah, I like that, and I think what Edith Johnson from the forums, her post about undercutting Imagism, you referenced the Imagist Manifesto, which, you know, as maybe all manifestos do in a sort of way that might ultimately be doomed, but tries really hard to lay out the rules for the movement. You know, there is no maybe like pure Imagism in its purest form or whatever, but I think Edith's right to bring up those two poems as ones where, or maybe all of Imagism is it's not just an image, because, you know, then we would just look at a photograph, although that's also loaded because photographs, of course, have a point of view and a composition and all of that. So some really good, and oh yeah, and a question back there.
Yes, my question is this. It may be a little silly, but at least it'll get me on YouTube, so I'm going to ask it. I remember many years ago reading, I think, I may be wrong because I'm really advanced in age now, but Henry James wrote a book, I believe, A Portrait of a Lady. And Henry James was an expat from New York who moved to London. And I'm not familiar with the poem, A Portrait of a Lady, but when I hear this question being reiterated, what shore, what shore, what shore? And I'm just wondering, comes to my mind that why would Williams choose a title like A Portrait of a Lady that has been so much in the public sphere for many years by this novel by Henry James? Has it ever been, could you answer, has anyone ever thought that there might be a connection between Henry James's novel and Williams' selection of this poem, and maybe he's trying to objectify the novel in this title?
Well, if I may, in addition to the James, I might just open it up to the tradition of portraiture. So, you know, A Portrait of a Lady being a common title, you know, of a painting, you might see like a portrait of a lady. But oh, and look who has just arrived.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late. Got Mike?
Of course. Sorry, we proceed.
Oh,
another mic.
I don't think we have another mic, but here we can share.
Sorry to interrupt. Hello, everybody. How's Lily doing?
Thanks.
And Allie Castleman? Awesome. Yeah, wait a minute. And Allie Castleman? Yes.
Okay, well, David was thinking he wanted to take a crack at it, so I welcome you.
All right, 2 mics. Okay, so I kind of had the same thought you kind of finished off with about Portrait of a Lady, kind of the poem itself objectifying the title of the book, because I kind of feel like throughout the poem he's saying which shore, which lady, which a whole bunch of questions. And I feel like that ties into the title in by, like you said, it's so well known in society, the title of Portrait of a Lady. So he's kind of like questioning that mentality of who is the lady, who is, like, what is this lady that everyone's so impressed about, and why is it relevant? I feel like that's what he was trying to get at, personally.
Nice. Chris, we've gotten one call so far, right? The number is 484. You're supposed to eat this number after you hear it. Never use it again. 484-483-5708. 484-483-5708.
I would also add, to answer your question about Portrait of a Lady, is I think he's really directly engaging with that tradition. Like, I don't think we're supposed to see these two titled works of art, Portrait of a Lady, as necessarily completely separate or discrete. I think that they're engaging with each other. And I think he's definitely expecting you to kind of pull on that tradition in a way. When you think of a Portrait of a Lady, maybe you're not just thinking Henry James, you're also thinking of all of the wonderful, you know, strictly representational traditions of portraits of ladies. Portraits of ladies in fancy dresses, portraits of ladies nude, portraits of ladies with their cats, you know, who knows? Like, there's many, many, many different levels of portraits of ladies in art, just wonderful tradition of Western art of portraits of ladies in various states of being. And I think we're looking at Williams actually really engaging with this question of, okay, like, what does it actually mean to render, either in words or in paint, a portrait of a lady? What do we actually need to do? Well, maybe this representational thing that we've been trying to do isn't really going to cut it anymore for our modern ladies, which is why you see him questioning the act of representation and actually leaving us readers the process of that questioning. That's all that which shore, apple trees, what? Touching the sky, what is that even, you know? Like, he leaves that process of questioning out there for us. I love this poem. It's one of my favorite poems this week.
Anna, can you say why that poem kind of looks forward to postmodernism?
Ew.
Or you'll think of an answer to that, but why does this poem look forward to strategies used by contemporary poets?
That orientation to the process, that focus on the process of writing the poem more than the product, the end result of the poem, I would say.
Anybody else on that question? Allie, why does that poem look forward, at least in this course?
Because it's one of the first poems that we get that it's explicitly a meta poem. Inside the poem, he is enacting himself writing the poem. We get to see the bare bones of his kind of mental decisions and indecisions as he's writing. We get access to all of it.
So it's not our first meta poem,
It's not
but
our
it may be the first meta poem where the poet actually calls him or herself out completely and says, "What are you doing, you jerk?" Whereas Emily Dickinson, I Taste the Liquor Never Brewed. How many of you are ModPo people who wrote an essay on I Taste the Liquor Never Brewed? There's a few in the back. Oh, look, they're admitting to it.
Yay!
Can someone, do we have a mic that goes out there? Mandana, can you find somebody out there who would be willing to talk about that poem, I Taste the Liquor Never Brewed? Who's willing? There were a lot of hands. There's one. Can you say who you are?
Hi, I'm Anika Lani.
Anika, hello.
How are you?
How's ModPo so far?
It's tough.
Tough because it's a lot of hours?
Tough because I was taking it as a breather, and I didn't know it was going to be so robust.
I guess that's a compliment.
It is a compliment.
Yeah.
I was describing it today like they're online, they're offline, they're webcasting, they're doing
Yeah, it goes on and on. So I Taste the Liquor Never Brewed could be read as a meta poem. Do you want to try that?
It could be read as a meta poem. I need a little more.
Can we recite it together? Well, no, we can recite it, I think, right? I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Am I the only one?
Not all the vats.
Not all the vats upon the Rhine yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee, sorry for my French, of dew. And what's the next line? Reeling through summer days from inns of molten blue. You got it. Till seraphs swing their snowy hats.
No, you skipped
Nope, I
one.
missed the stanza. Go ahead. Oh, it's about the foxgloves being kicked out because they're drinking
the
too much.
landlords turned out the foxgloves door.
Out of the foxgloves door, and butterflies shall
renounce their drams. I shall but drink the more.
Till everybody, seraphs swing their snowy hats. What a great line.
To see the
To
little
see and something to the windows run.
saints to windows.
Saints to windows run. To see the little tippler, that would be Emily, leaning against the sun. Okay. How is that a metapoem?
I was still trying to figure out the meaning of metapoem.
Okay. Great. Lily, take a stab at who's in the Google Hangouts?
We have Amaris, Caroline, and Max is just a picture right now.
Max is just a picture. Okay. So how about Lily and then Amaris defining metapoem briefly?
Sure. I think.
Hello, Stephen.
I think that. Oh, thank you, Stephen. For me, when I think about meta poetry, I think of self-consciousness and either a process orientation within the poem itself. So meaning like when we look at the poem, we get either a literal, like Eric was saying, thematized sense of the poet's process of writing a poem, or some kind of look outward from the poem itself that makes us aware that it is a work of poetry and not meant to be transparently representational in some way. So for me, it's about self-consciousness and being able to see the poet's process somewhere in the poem, whether that's like thematized or somehow otherwise expressed.
Can you render that into a phrase?
Well, I thought I just said a couple phrases, but
ouch.
I think.
What's a definition?
The cheap and quick answer is poetry that's about poetry, but
Poetry about the poem.
I don't know that I like that definition because you could make a poem. I mean, if you made a poem that was like boring and flowery about poetry and how great, like, you know, poetry the muse is or whatever, I guess that would be a metapoem, but that wouldn't be the type of metapoem we would look at in this class.
So why don't we just add phrases? So one of them is sometimes a poem about poetry, or a poem about itself, which is the self-consciousness you were describing.
Right, yeah, I think self-conscious really says it because it's not just about accidentally thematizing poetry. It's about the poet sitting down and saying, here's a moment where I'm looking outward, or I'm going to communicate that I'm aware of what my project is, whatever it is.
Maurice, you want to add to that?
Sure. I think Lily gave a pretty comprehensive definition of metapoetry, but self-referencing, the idea that it enacts the process of writing itself. So we were talking about that sort of breakdown in self-consciousness in Portrait of a Lady is very metapoetic, and then Emily Dickinson's Taste of Liquor Never Brewed, clearly she is not referencing literal liquor, literal inebriation. Rather, it's sort of inebriation of imagination, the high of creating and writing poetry.
So you just did Anika's work for her.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
pretty good. No, but that's great. Anika, you still have the mic? Okay, how is I Taste Liquor Never Brewed a metapoem? And then the question is back to how does Williams take that step forward more extremely? Anika, anything?
Well, I think that what she does, she is self-aware in the poem, obviously, because it's very much I. But I did see it as a, I did take it a little bit literal because I thought, literally because I was like, well, you're getting some insight into Emily's knowledge of other things besides her rebelliousness within her duty as a woman of her era. Like, I thought it was, I mean, for all of the examples and essays that talk about it being this allusion to nature and these metaphors about nature, I was also like, yeah, she also has some insight into what it's like to be inebriated, whether it's her or family members, brothers, the kind of letters that she wrote back and forth. I mean, I had to really do research to write the essay.
It's really well said, and can we praise Anika for all that?
So I think what you said, embedded in what you said, is the metapoetic quality, which is to say, when the poet starts to reel, she reels. We know she's not drunk because she's writing a poem about being drunk or about imagining an alternative to alcohol. And when the poem starts to reel through its conceits, we know that's a metapoetic quality in the sense that Lily meant before, because the poet is now losing control in a deliberate way because she wants to break out of the tradition of that ballad. It's a very metrically even poem. I taste the liquor never brewed from tankard steeped in pearl. But she starts to lose control of the conceits, and she's very happy about that. So now back to Williams, because that's week 2. Now to go to week 3. So how does anybody want to say Williams is pushing that kind of metapoetic poem to the next level? Who wants to say it? And then we're going to go to a phone call. Right, Chris? Okay, great. Does anybody want to take a risk on this and try it? Portrait of a Lady pushes it further. Thank you so much for volunteering.
So the sense I got from Emily Dickinson's is that she's kind of discussing it, but it's completely metaphor, so it's still kind of a hidden message. Whereas in A Portrait of a Lady, it's very direct and upfront, where he's literally breaking the fourth wall and telling his readers, these are my thoughts while writing this poem.
Fantastic.
And it's like,
so well said.
He's just saying, these are all of the questions I'm having and the struggles I'm facing while writing this, so you can see everything that's going on within my process.
So great. And does that, what's your name? Derek? Derek, does that please you or give you any pleasure, or does it make you nervous about the rest of the course? Because this is only week 3, and frankly, we're not going back to non-metapoetic.
Well,
this is intensely self-conscious.
I'm not in the course, so...
Oh, you're not nervous at all.
No.
How do you know all this, then?
I like poetry.
Fantastic. So...
Want to sign up? Because
yeah, it's free. It's free.
I'll see if I have the time.
So, to sum up what's been said, Williams is actually calling himself out in a way Dickinson certainly called herself out. There's no doubt about that. And I think we can work backwards to Dickinson and see ways in which she says, no, Emily, no, this is, be wilder, see if the conceits can reel. What Williams is saying is, you jerk, you're going in the usual direction. This is why Anna's so excited about it as a kind of weird Williams way of calling himself out about rendering the woman who is the object of the traditional portraiture. He's saying, no, you idiot, you can't do that anymore. And John Ashbery in chapter 8 is going to say, you can't say it that way anymore, and he's going to prohibit himself from doing that. So there is kind of a flow. Chris, who do we have on the phone? We have Kim Barcelona. Kim! Oh, put her up.
Hi.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Al.
How are you?
Fine. Hanging in.
Kim, can I tell a story about you before you ask your question?
Please.
So Kim posted to our, is that she's still there, Kim?
We missed another call. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Kim, you posted to Twitter at ModPo Pen saying, oh, I'm so upset because someone wrote a kind of negative review of my essay. And in response to that, Water Lucy Fall, who's very active, Lucy Waterfall in ModPo, wrote and said, oh, I'm sorry, it's so offensive, but ModPo peeps very supportive. That's actually what you wrote in response to her. Then I moved that over to Facebook and back into the forums, and as of this morning when I left Philly, it took me about 9 hours to get here, there were 26 comments on your essay, and the nasty one, or the negative one, I hope that person isn't listening, or maybe I do, the negative one was just one of 26 comments on your essay. So more ever, here's a boost for massive open online courses that are also free. Anybody paying full tuition going to a university right now? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm sorry to say this. But I, at least in college, I went to a good college, I would put in an essay and get a couple of check marks, a few comments, and a grade, which was very hard to decipher. Here in ModPo, Kim in Barcelona writes an essay on Dickinson and gets 26 responses. And I just want to call out, Kim, before you ask your question, Linda Ireland, Teresa Fraguada, Gabriel Safar, Magdalena Castani, Joanne P., Robin Cohn, Ellen Brown of CTA, and Nicola Quinn, all of whom responded to the call for help to overwhelm the negative comment to support you. So, Kim, thank you for hanging in there.
Oh, yes. I totally agree with you. It's a very welcoming, supportive place, and I was floored by how kind everyone was.
Great. So, and you are in Barcelona?
Yes.
So what's your question or comment? What time is it?
2:12.
Whoa. Can we give Kim from Barcelona a big hand for staying up with you?
We're keeping her up even later by not letting her ask her question.
So our response to your question is going to be so electric, you're not going to be able to go to bed till 4. Go ahead. Ignore all those. It's Chris getting all kinds of phone calls, so ignore those and ask your question. Thank you, Kim.
Okay. Well, it wasn't a question, actually. I had a sort of a vague thinking about Emily and meta poetry, and I wanted to put forward the idea that the taster becomes not the tasted, but the taste.
Did we lose you, Kim?
Oh, did you?
No. Go ahead. Finish
I'm here. I can
finish
hear
your
you.
question.
Yes?
Yeah. Finish your comment, please.
Okay. I wanted to change or rearrange the title of my essay to "The Taster Becomes the Taste."
And why?
Well, because I was thinking about the meta poetry and other comments that came through my essay and things I read on other essays. And it's because it starts out, I taste, so she's tasting, rather than focusing on the liquor and the brew. And then, especially when we get back to the little tippler and why it was a tippler and it was leaning against the sun, the whole thing, I thought, well, of course, she becomes the taste. She becomes the liquor brewed.
Yeah. Your original essay was titled "The Observer Becomes the Observed." So you're working on some kind of switcheroo. Dave Poplar, have you followed what we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I got in the tail end of your conversation, but I heard the question about the taster becoming the taste itself.
Do you want to comment on that?
I think that's a great way of putting what this is doing. It's putting people not just as a passive reader, but they're becoming part of the thing itself. I mean it's like Sid Corman. It all exists together.
And what does that do to a subject and object? Anyone? Dave? Maurice? The whole problem of subject and object, which is a big issue this week. I did the teacherly ambiguous thing of not calling on one of them, so I'll call on Lily or Anna to say anything about that.
We had a great question from Colleen Knight, actually, before you got here, where we talked about subject and object. Oh my God, my phone is
freaking out.
It's made me really nauseous, actually. So I think that if we go with Kim's reading, then the liquor begins as an object and a static thing, but we talked about how that liquor is probably not a literal liquor. So if maybe Emily's subjectivity then sort of morphs and becomes the liquor itself, which was formerly an object, then maybe that's the subject-object situation that we were talking about.
Kim, how would you describe the reversal you're trying to pull off?
Describe it?
Yeah. What's happening when you do that? What's the purpose of it?
It helps me get my head around the whole idea of the poet and meta poetry, and how it feels.
Mm-hmm. So tell me how the rest of week 3 is going for you. Were you able to complete most of the poems?
Oh no, I haven't even started.
Okay. Okay.
The essays were sort of all-consuming.
Okay. Kim, thank you so much for being part of ModPo, and we hope
thank you.
We hope you continue to enjoy it. Thank you.
I do.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. After Kim hangs up, people can call 484-483-5708, 484-483-5708. Can we get a mic all the way to the back, please?
Thank you. I wrote an essay last year about this poem in ModPo the previous year.
Which one?
The Dickinson poem, which I called my essay, I'll Have What She's Having.
Oh, I remember it.
And I think that in what I found and what I started my essay with, the stanza from William Blake connects this poem by Emily Dickinson with Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass.
That's a trick.
And I'll just read you half of the stanza, and you could make your own decision. If you will feed me on love thoughts and give me now and then a cup of sparkling poetic fancies, so when I am tipsy, I'll sing to you to this soft lute and show you all alive the world when every particle of dust breathes forth its joy. And the line that precedes those lines, I will write a book on leaves of flowers. So,
can we get some snaps for that very inventive response? Thank you so much. Anna, are you following the forums somehow?
I'm on Twitter.
You're doing Twitter. Can you read a few tweets, and then we'll go to a question from the forums from Lily, and then we'll go to the phone because I think somebody called.
Yeah, of course, now the tweets aren't loading because...
Yeah.
Because nothing's going to work today.
I know.
Really.
It's just, I can't begin to tell you. Lily, what do you see in the forums?
Well, actually, since we've been talking a lot about the, before you got here, we described it as an anxiety in Portrait of a Lady, of that interrupting voice. Diana Ramirez Zarate asks if there's any anxiety present in Williams's Between Walls also. So I think she's asking maybe if any of that, either any of that same anxiety about representation is present there, or if anxiety is like a force operating in that poem at all.
That's such a good question.
Between Walls, such a great question. Can we all recite Between Walls? Does anybody know it?
Can you do it in your Williams voice?
Between walls, the back wings of the hospital, where nothing will grow. What do you think, Stephen, so far? Yeah. Lie cinders in which shine the broken pieces of green bottle.
Snaps for Al.
Was I the only one who did that? Okay, so who would like to see anxiety? Allie Castleman. And then Caroline. Caroline, have you been introduced?
Yes.
Great. Allie and then Caroline, where do you see any anxiety similar to Portrait of a Lady? Portrait of a Lady is generally more radical in its self-consciousness. This is quite a poem.
Well, what I was noticing earlier when I was reading this is the kind of inelegance between the title. There's not a very smooth transition between the title, Between Walls, and then the beginning of the poem.
Right.
So we get Between Walls, the back wings of the hospital where nothing. So if that pattern continues just in how the poem is formally laid out.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any anxiety, the anxiety that jumps out to me the most is honestly how it appears on the page is the kind of
it's a nervous layout.
Yeah, it's nervous. It kind of looks like steps in a sense that might exist in or around the hospital.
So it's possible for this modernist anxiety to be discerned in the very layout on the page. Mandana, would you give Stephen Motika I'm sorry, Stephen, I'm putting you on the spot. So a contemporary poet as well as someone who makes this building work, this house work. more about that later when we say our thank yous. But does Williams still speak to you as a contemporary poet, this kind of nervousness or edginess at all?
Absolutely. I love that word nervousness for it. It reminds me of Susan Howe a few years ago, very nervously reading from Patterson in this room. And I think reading Spring and All recently, and there was a reissue of the original edition from New Directions, I see that. And I was also thinking of the idea of error in Williams and how important that is, and how important that insertion is throughout modern and contemporary poetry.
That's nice, and thank you. And while there isn't any actual error that's corrected in the middle of Between Walls, there is nothing that grows. So he's looking down at this post-industrial hospital space and seeing lifelessness, and then realizing that in the turn that he can find something that shines. So there's a kind of correction, of course correction. Caroline, do you have something to add to this? Caroline, can you? Yeah, there you
My
go.
microphone was off. I was just gonna say, like, the first thing that jumps out to me is the line "will grow lie." Just seeing the three. When you look away from it, just three. It looks like three verbs right by each other. Just
Nice.
strange enjambments of the as a line by itself, and absolutely no punctuation. Yeah, no capitalization, which Williams being. I think Bob Perlman would talk about how Williams, really fought to not capitalize the first letter of his lines. I think so that as like a really important innovation in this showing in this poem. Those are just things. This is not a Williams poem that I'm very familiar with, so these are just kind of first impression type of things that are jumping out at me.
Well, thank you very much. And can we get a mic over there? And just to capitalize, as it were, on Caroline's comment, if you're looking at this poem freshly and you see "will grow lie," you realize how deeply disjunctive and strange this poem is. And then if you make whole sense of it, you begin to piece it together as a kind of normal statement. But until then, you're completely disjointed. Yes, hi, you look familiar. Who are you?
I'm Jason. I'm not familiar.
Okay. Are you in ModPo?
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
Good. It's a lot of fun.
Great.
I wanted to comment on the anxiety that you were pointing out. The thing that's strange to me about this is that when he reads the poem, he doesn't read it like he has put it on the page. He reads it where the obvious breaks would go.
Yes.
So he may have anxiety about the way he presents the poem in print, but not in the way he reads it.
Wow, you made such a great point. Thank you. This is true of Williams. He reads right past the experimental disjunctions that he's written in words. The recording we have from Pen Sound of this poem, which was recorded after his first stroke and before his second stroke, the stroke slows him down in a way that actually makes it, if I can put it this way, more experimental, because he finds the words very difficult to say. But you're absolutely right. Chris, we have someone on the phone, and then I want to go to Lily with some stuff from the forums. And how's your Twitter feed coming? Is it not really working?
Not
okay.
great.
Chris, Martin, who do we have? Allison B.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Hi, Allison.
Hey, Al. What's going on?
What's going on in state? What did you call that? Happy Valley?
Yeah, it's the Happy Valley. Do you know why it's called that?
Because Penn State used to have a really good football team?
Well,
oh, sorry.
That's true, but it's called the Happy Valley because it's the only place during World War II that didn't go into recession.
Why? Were they building planes?
No, they had a university.
Well, there are a
And
lot of
that's like
places
the
that had
whole-
universities.
That's why it's called state college. That's all we have, though.
Oh,
It's
that's-
different. There's nothing else.
That's cool. And you are a faculty member at Penn State, am I right?
I am.
In
That is-
what field?
That is accurate.
In what field?
Nutritional sciences.
Say it again.
Nutrition.
Nutrition. And why did you come over from nutrition to hang out with the poets?
Because poetry is an essential nutrient.
I knew you were going to say that. And Allison is a community TA, and the community TAs, we're going to plug them. They're fantastic. Allison, do you what?
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing. That's really funny.
Do you have a question or comment, Allison?
So I just wanted to make a plug for ModPo Plus in this week because I think there's a lot of awesome gems in there, and I've been spending a lot of time with Anti-Short Story by our friend Ray Armentrout and been having a blast with Joanne P. in the forum. So
Yeah.
I encourage you guys to join me.
Does anybody, thank you, Allison. Does anybody want to describe what ModPo Plus is? Anybody? Eric Weinstein, you back there? Or Mandana, you've got the mic. Say what ModPo Plus is.
Oh, I promised Mandana we wouldn't call on her.
Oh, I wasn't here when that happened.
Hi, Allison. So ModPo Plus, I think, started because ModPo has been going on for 4 years, and there were a lot of things that were in the original syllabus that we wanted to expand upon. So for the people that have been taking ModPo for 4 years plus, there's always more to look at. And there's always more to explore that ties into what we're studying in regular ModPo, but kind of expands upon it a little bit more.
So ModPo Plus is a supplemental syllabus for people who have already been through the ModPo poems. And instead of creating another course where we would divide the community, some people would be in one site and some people would be in the other, we decided to put it all together to build an ongoing community. And so, Anna?
And to be honest, it ties in very well together because when you look at something like Attic, which is Desire, it
By
really
Williams.
by Williams, it ties in really, really well with Dance Rus. If, as you said, anyone has time to go look at all the poems at once.
Yeah. Thank you. Allison, thanks for the call.
Yeah,
And
thanks guys. Have
thanks-
a great time.
Thanks for all your work. We're going to take one more call if it comes, and the next caller is going to receive from us a copy of Julia Block's book, Letters to Kelly Clarkson, which is not that easy to find. So let's hear some tweets, and then, Lily, some things from the forum, and then we'll take one more phone call, and then I have some shout-outs to wrap up. So, and apologies for starting late, and my profuse apologies for arriving very late. So, Anna, tweets?
Yeah, so we've got lots of...
Just read them off.
We got Karen Elenier again doing her classic live tweet. We love it. Poetry is an essential nutrient. She says, William Carlos Williams reading right past the page stops. You know, what a good point, Jason. So she's giving you some props for that. We've got Ray Maxwell tweeting a picture of his notes from ModPo 2012,
He's
which
incredible.
is awesome. He's amazing. Ray, we love you. We got lots of activity talking about Caroline's wonderful observation about the 3 verbs next to each other in between vowels.
Way to go, Caroline.
Yep, we love that. Megan Worrell-Lupton, we love her too.
Yeah, Megan
She's,
from North Carolina.
Yep, she's tweeting some pictures of green plastic bottles on the table. Look.
Aw. Couple more?
Yes, we've got, let's see. Oh, Therese Pope, she says that you nailed the voice of William Carlos Williams.
Thank you, Therese.
It's so creepy.
It made him sound like Jiminy Cricket. That's not really good. But
Megan also says the poetry recitation force is strong tonight. So I like it.
cool.
Yeah.
Great. Lil, what do we have in the forums? There's probably a lot.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of quiet in the webcast forum, but we're turning to CJ, either Fernley or Fearnley. Sorry, CJ, if I'm not pronouncing your last name.
CJ from Philly.
Yes, and I think this is a big question, but an interesting one to tackle. He asks a lot, so I hope he'll forgive me paraphrasing. But essentially, he says, is there a way to start an interpretation or a conversation except timidly? Should we be boldly timid? Can a conversation start with anything but preconceived notions? I prefer conversations that go deeply, prodded by challenging questions. But how can we be challenging and positive and encouraging?
Wow, CJ.
And he's really responding to the first essays and people's reviews and responses. So this is a good question.
It's a very good question. And for those of you who are not in ModPo, what's happening this week is that essays on Dickinson are being reviewed through a peer review system, no grades, but people are responding. And the difficult thing is, if you read an essay you disagree with or one that you think is not well argued, do you say that in a free and open course from around the world in typing? And our preference is that you find something positive to say. And we're winging it. So if you've not joined this, try, tens of thousands of people without a lot of preparation coming together, trying to figure out how to be nice to each other, but also be rigorous and learn. So Anika's comment that this is, what do you say, robust and rigorous and difficult, we want to maintain that while also being a very supportive community, because we want to be the opposite of those punitive educational situations where you have to learn or else. So thank you, CJ, for that. We have a last caller, Chris Martin. Ray is calling. Ray, let's put him up. Ray Maxwell.
Hello.
Hey, Ray.
Al, how are you?
I'm great. Listen, would you like a copy of Letters to Kelly Clarkson?
I'll take it.
Okay. All right. So we have your address. Yeah. We can find you. Ray, I'm confused.
You have my address.
You're supposed to be in North Carolina, but you seem to be back in Washington.
I'm back in Washington.
Okay.
And listen, I want to say this is my first time ever calling in 4 years.
That's right. I was going to say that.
That's totally crazy. Well, Ray is a community TA, and he's been with us from the start. And he joined ModPo right after leaving the State Department, and was there for many years in the military before that. And now he's fallen headlong into poetry. And we love you totally, Ray. And we're almost done here. Do you have there's no such thing as a quick Ray Maxwell question, but would you like to try one?
Well, I don't have a question, but I do have a tweet that I'd like to read to everyone.
Okay.
I tweeted that a metapoem is a place where the subject becomes the object and the object becomes the subject, all at once.
Nice.
Ray, you're deep. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes in ModPo we use the word intersubjectivity, which is confusing, but it's some of the stuff we've been talking about this week. Did you talk about the encounter? We're not going to do it.
We did, yes.
Yeah, so the encounter is an example of an attempt at intersubjectivity. Some of us think it's a failed attempt, and others have argued strenuously in the forums. I'm about to shout out to one in a minute when I get to my shout-outs, where there is some kind of exchange going on. But certainly Imagism makes it difficult to do that. Ray, so are you learning something new in the fourth year, or are you just going over old territory?
No, there's always something new. There's always something that you had missed the time before. For example, today on the subway, I was reading Pound in the Metro, of all places.
Yeah, and, in the Metro, right.
I was reading in the Metro, on the Metro. And
that's cool.
The environment sort of made some other things jump out at me. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, will you stay on the line, because we're about to go around and get final words real quickly from the panelists and the people in the Hangouts, and maybe you'll get a final word too, but this is going to have to be quick. Before I do some shout-outs and thank yous to Stephen and his colleagues, can we get some final words, everybody? So I see Dave and Caroline left in the Google Hangouts, but why don't we, and Mandana, you have a mic? So you'll get a final word too, and David too. So Allie, putting you on the spot. Final word about week 3, about ModPo's, cheerleading, encouragement, ballyhooing, whatever.
Well, as I said before, week 3 is one of my favorites, and I think that for me this is where we really, I think we were talking about Portrait of Lady before, and how we experienced that change from kind of covert to just very blatant. And yeah, I would just say in the forums with critiquing people's essays, I love the idea of being boldly timid, and I'm not sure I've worked that out in my mind yet. It's a complex nugget, but
But I think that the best way to kind of be bold and to really show respect is to summon enough energy to take what you like about something that someone has said or written and really push it deeper. I think for me that's one of the most important signs of respect and engagement.
So
don't be
put.
afraid of it.
We have a certain idealistic zeal in ModPo that an interpretive community is a community that's cooperative and mutual and peaceful. We have this idea that it can work. And in a world full of online communities where there are trolls and people who are mean to each other, ModPo, if nothing else, is an instance of this kind of bold kindness or bold shyness that, I mean, we really do think that works. We've made that claim, and for those of you who are new to it, maybe it's still awaits you to discover that. Lily, final word, and thank you so much for filling in for me. I really appreciate that.
Gosh.
Lily Applemound.
Yeah, I have two quick things to say. One, in response to CJ, this is something I think about with the course a lot, and to me there are two really important steps. One is to acknowledge what the other person has said, so not just rush to criticize or even just rush to praise. Just acknowledging that you're there, and I hear where you're coming from. Maybe say a way that something about what they said is sure to have sparked something in you, or else you wouldn't be responding. So definitely take a moment to tell them what that is. And then I often feel like part of his question was, what are we here to do? And we're really here to look at the text and go out from there. So I think really if you find something someone says that you feel is unsubstantiated, or maybe you don't agree, ask them to come back and talk with you and point to a line in the text where you jumped off and got to here, or help me understand what you're seeing because I don't see that, and really point back to the text. So those are my pieces of advice for that. And then my other plug is for office hours. I spend a lot of time in there just waiting for people to come talk to me, and office hours are really fun, and we really are there during office hours. You get a response within a minute or two if it takes that long. So there's a really helpful calendar that Anna and Zach put together. And just go when you're looking through the forums, even just to say hi and introduce yourself.
How many hours per week are we in office hours? 25,
All TAs
30?
have 3 office hours.
I mean, so here's a MOOC where you can get instantaneous response to your questions or concerns.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I saw someone post recently. I have a silly question or a stupid question? Can I ask someone without looking at it? And I just want to say that you can ask a stupid or silly question on office hours, because really only we're going to be looking
really
at that
notices,
form. Yeah,
right.
so do that, and also don't think of it as a silly or stupid question.
Yeah.
But if you have one, that's a good place.
Thank you. Let's go to Caroline and David for final words, and then to David here. I'm sorry, to Dave Poplar, and then to David here. Caroline, final word. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. I just want to give HD another plug. I think we had some earlier discussion maybe that HD was a little bit hard to get to know. And if you didn't like HD's work here on the website in ModPo, maybe give her longer work a try, like or some of her experimental film work, which I've posted some links in my office hours. Or come to my office hours today. Only one person came, so I'm always there to talk about HT or help you find a way to come to. So that's my final word.
Thank you, Caroline. And of course, as you know, Caroline is one of our teaching fellows. ModPo has 2 graduate teaching fellows, and Caroline is especially interested in teachers, working with teachers, but also with students in classes where this stuff is being taught. So thank you, Caroline. Dave Poplar, final word.
Just something quick. I wanted to just agree with Allie that I really like this chapter of this week too, because it really does get into the meat of things as far as modernism is concerned. And one of those things for me is the connection with art. I mean, I think you can see it with Duchamp's work, with the fountain, and with Nude Descending the Staircase. I love how what we're doing is now being visually represented too. So it just gives us another angle to approach it.
Hey, Dave, what happens in week 4?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
We're going for Stein.
Yeah, we're going to have half the week is Stein, Gertrude Stein.
What else do we have?
Fasten your seatbelts. And then the second half is what we call modernism at extreme. So it's Tristan Zara, who's not exactly a U.S. poet, but whatever, and to bring some data in. And also the Baroness Elsa von Freytag Loringhoven, who is a treat, a total treat, wild, amazing. She embodied Dada. So that's week 4. Let's go to David here for a final word. Thank you for joining us at the table, David.
Thank you for letting me be at the table. I'd just like to say that it really felt awesome trying to attempt to speak about poetry to your caliber. So that was pretty awesome.
Did he do it, guys? Come on.
And also regarding whoever had the negative comment, don't worry about it. You do you. Your paper. Have confidence in yourself, and that's all you really need. Because at the end of the day,
oh,
you're
David,
representing yourself.
Can you come to Philly and hang out with us? Where did this guy come from? You're so great.
Brooklyn.
You came from Brooklyn. I wish I had been coming from Brooklyn today. I left at 3:30 and got here at whatever. Anna Strong, final word.
Well, first final word would be to just apologize profusely for our extreme tardiness. It wasn't our fault. It was Amtrak's fault, but still.
My goodness.
Let's just apologize for the tardiness. And thank you all so much for being here in this space. I'm sure for being as supportive and wonderful of the amazing, again, Lily Applebaum. So thank you so much for all of that. And I guess I would also just continue to plug the peer reviews. And I've been thinking a lot about peer reviews this week. I've been reading a ton of them, and I've mostly been completely inspired and thrilled by the amount of care and attention that's been taken with people's essays. Like, again, you wouldn't believe how incredibly supportive and wonderful this community is. And I want to especially shout out to the CTAs for their role in making that happen.
Community TAs.
Really, you guys are just incredible, the work that you do and the support that you give.
And we have at least one in the room, Eric. Thank you. And Mandana.
Yeah.
Sharon, hi. Wait a minute. I didn't know you were in New York. You're not. You are in New York. That's so great. Oh, we've known each other for 4 years.
She described it as being on tour. She's coming to Philly next.
That's so great. That's so great. And when I wrap up, I'm going to say, Stephen, we're still doing a little reception effort. So we're, for those of you who can stay, let's hang out and get to know each other more. Not the people who are watching. Sorry, you can't join us. Ray Maxwell, are you still on?
I'm still on.
Final word, man.
The apparition of these faces in the crowd, pet on a wet black bow.
Fantastic. That's a final word. I won't ask you to say more because that was sufficient. Thank
Final
you.
word.
Thank you, Ray, so much. Mandana, you got the mic. Final word.
2 quick final words since I have the mic. First of all, I want to follow on what you said, Allie, in another plane. For those of you who are lurking and afraid to comment or start a thread, go ahead and do it. If you have a thought, I bet you there are a lot of people who are afraid to put that thought out there, and there's nothing wrong with putting a thread out and talking to people and seeing how many people are interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
And then second, because we're in New York City, the first New York City meetup is October 17th at the fantastic Grand Central Library, and we hope to see you there. Get on our New York City thread. In ModPo, and we'd love to see you.
That's great, and thank you for hosting that. A couple of shout-outs and then some thank yous all around, particularly to Stephen and his colleagues. One shout-out is to Audra Crane and Colleen Knight. Colleen, who's from Canada, who called earlier, apparently. They have a thread I recommend. It's called Object in Imagism Differs from Objectification. And what they did is they managed to disagree with our reading of Pound's The Encounter by saying, actually, we're too quick to criticize Pound for objectifying the woman on the couch or who's sitting there, and they've completely reread and reinterpreted that. The key is that Colleen's notion that maybe this is what you guys talked about.
It is, yeah.
Great. So it's a great thread, and I urge you to look at it. And what happened in this thread is, in response to my saying I really enjoyed the conversation, Colleen wrote, I'm enjoying the feedback. Thank you, Al. It has me rethinking my first take on my reading, which is a good thing. A great example of how a group can garner more meaning from a poem than just one person alone. Now, in a way, that's obvious, right? Except we've all been taught our educational system is based on the idea that you take a text and you go home and do what's called homework by yourself. And then there's some kind of loose, superficial, bullshit, business school approach to, study groups. But actually, masses of people, masses of them, in configurations that are only now in the last decade or so possible to organize across locations and across nations and across linguistic cultures, can form together and actually come up with a better interpretation, a more robust one that's really stood the test of lots of disagreements, can emerge from that. And I think what Colleen is celebrating in something like a massive open online course is that it's always much better when a crowd of people works on something together. And we've been calling the wisdom of the gigantic room, or the wisdom of crowds, and I think this is a great example of it. So get onto that thread and see, in fact, how the wisdom of crowds is reinventing what it's like to think about these kinds of poems. The other shout out is to the Los Angeles group that a week ago, or less than a week ago, my goodness, just a few days ago, we were in Los Angeles. And what we did in Los Angeles is we had a meetup, and we did a video of 13 out of the 25 or so who joined us, 13 people, each in a video, each interpreted one of the 13 ways of looking at a blackbird by Wallace Stevens. So we had 13 ways of looking at a blackbird, and for section 9, we had 13 interpretations. And really, and it's when the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. And there's been such a great response to this, and I think some of the hilarity and excitement that results from this is this giddiness that we feel when we can take something that we thought only Wallace Stevens and these cubists / imagists could do, which is multiply something 13 ways and go 13 more theoretically for each, thereby algorithmically increasing by this new form of reading poetry what we thought of as just the result of a genius, a modernist genius. But the postmodern genius is absolutely everyone multiplying interpretations and using a radical form of subjectivity to produce new ways of interpreting. And that puts the lie to the idea that there's a right answer, obviously. But the fact is that modernism was supposed to have broken that into at least 13 ways. And what we're doing is we're doing that times 13. And I really think it's a great way to go. So thank you to everybody who's interested in that sort of thing. And this is my chance to plug the crowdsourced close readings page, which is a brand new page in ModPo where we link to YouTube videos made by you. Everybody watching this and people in this audience here, you should make a video, post it to YouTube, of you and some friends at a meetup or just family interpreting one of our poems, and soon ModPo will consist of hundreds and maybe thousands of people around the world doing close readings, so that people, students and teachers who access the site will have all kinds of stuff, not just the 8 of us sitting at a table at the writer's house seeming to get the final answer, but in fact a true radical openness. Well, thanks to Stephen Motika. Stephen, are you still around, or is he setting up the... There he is. Let's hear it for Stephen, please. Thank you for hosting us here. This is a big deal for us. Reginald Harris, your colleague, Scott, I guess, is it pronounced Bluberthal? And Lauren Clark at Poets House, and that's poetshouse.org. For those of you who are watching through the webcast around the world, poetshouse.org. And when you're in New York, you have to come all the way downtown by the Hudson River to Poets House. Just take the 2 or the 3 all the way down and then walk or run, as I did, to Poets House. It's such a great place. So, Mandana, thank you for doing your part as usual, and for the meetups here. Anna Strong, you're the best. I know you ran. We were looking at each other on different delayed trains. It was so weird. Thank you. So weird. Thank you, David, for sitting up here. Lily, thank you again. You're just the best, Lily Applebaum. Allie Castleman, your first webcast this year. Are you going to come to others? Okay, fantastic. And everybody who's here, can you give yourselves a hand? and the CTAs who are here. And I think we must reserve, and I think my iPhone has run out of battery. So will somebody take a picture of this ridiculous mess that they made? Somebody take pictures? Okay, so what they did is they came here, they spent the entire day here setting this thing up. It is not easy doing a live ModPo webcast. Believe me, there's so many elements to it. Some of them are extremely ancient, like telephones, right? And Jason, where's Jason? No, I'm sorry. Oh, the wires comment, yes. This is really hard to do, and Zach and Chris are pretty much the nation's only, I mean, seriously, it is very hard to do what they're doing, and it looks a lot easier than it is. And so can we really take a second to thank them tremendously? For those of you who only see us once a week in the webcast, we'll see you in office hours, we'll see you at meetups around the globe, and we will see you for the next live webcast, which is next week. Gertrude Stein and the Baroness Elsa von Freitag Loringhoven say goodbye to anything that seems to make sense. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. Come hang out with us at a reception, please. Thank you for coming, and I apologize.